My family's always been big on winter sports. I grew up hitting the slopes every season. When I was around 15, we decided to head to a new resort up in Maine, a bit further north than we usually traveled. We rented this sweet cabin right off the trails, so we could practically roll out of bed and onto the lifts. The first day was awesome. The snow was fresh, the runs were long, and we even met some cool people to hang with. But the second day, that started to change. See, I got bored of the regular trails pretty quickly. I'm a bit of a thrill seeker, the type who craves backcountry stuff and fresh powder. I kept trying to convince my parents and my little sister to try some off-piste trails just past the boundary lines, but they weren't having it. Typical, right? I decided to go rogue anyway. I know, not the brightest idea, but I figured I was experienced enough to handle it. I took my pack, checked for reception, and told my mom I was hitting one more regular run before lunch back at the cabin. I lied. Instead, I took the lift and then ducked under the yellow rope marking the resort boundary. The snow was untouched, the trees thick, it felt incredible. For a little while. Around an hour in, I realized I might have gotten myself turned around. Every cluster of pines started looking the same, the sun was dipping low, and all those pristine trails I'd been carving vanished under fresh snowfall. I was starting to get a little nervous. I kept my cool, figured I'd just backtrack a bit and see if I could pick up a landmark or a sign of the resort area. The thing is, I didn't see anything. I just kept venturing deeper in. My phone had 0 bars, it was getting colder, and darker. Here's where it gets a little weird. I was convinced I heard whistling behind me. Just this soft, tuneless whistle. I kept thinking I saw flickers of movement out of the corner of my eye, but every time I turned to look, they'd vanish. The whistling though, it got louder. Panic set in. Was I losing it? Was this the early stages of hypothermia? Or was something out there with me? I was practically sprinting through the trees now, desperate to find any sign of civilization. The whistling followed me every step of the way. Then, I saw it. A sliver of the resort boundary fence peeking through the trees. Relief flooded through me, I'd made it. I bolted towards it, the whistling fading behind me. Except, I didn't make it all the way. My foot caught on something buried in the snow, and I went down hard. I twisted my ankle with a sickening pop, could barely put any weight on it. It was dark now, and I was miles from the cabin with a busted ankle. I thought I might actually pass out from the pain. I tried shouting for help, but my voice sounded pathetic against the wind and the quiet emptiness of the woods. That's when I heard it again, only closer this time. That damned whistling. Something was coming toward me. I had no choice. I propped myself up against a tree and used my skis and poles to shove myself back, dragging myself along the snow. Every inch further was agony, but I kept that image in my head, the resort fence just a bit further, and safety beyond. After what felt like forever, I finally reached it. With a surge of adrenaline, I hauled myself over and tumbled back into resort territory. Suddenly, the whistling ceased. Whatever was out there was gone. I lay there catching my breath, listening to nothing but the soft sound of snow falling. I must have passed out, because the next thing I remember is the ski patrol lights flashing all around me. Search and rescue had found me just in time. One winter break, we decided to try ice fishing on a frozen lake a few hours outside the city. It was supposed to be a quick getaway, a chance to catch some fish and enjoy the winter scenery. We arrived at the lake late in the afternoon. The ice looked thick and solid, and we set up our gear near a small shack on the shore. We drilled holes, dropped our lines, and settled in for a relaxing afternoon. The first few hours were uneventful. We chatted, joked, and enjoyed the peaceful atmosphere. But as the sun began to set, the temperature dropped rapidly. We bundled up in our warmest clothes, but the cold started to seep through to our bones. Suddenly, we heard a loud cracking sound. We looked out at the ice and saw a long, spiderweb-like crack spreading across the surface, moving towards our location. Panic surged through us. We knew we had to get off the ice immediately. We grabbed our gear and rushed towards the shore, the ice groaning ominously beneath our feet. The crack grew wider with every step, and I could feel the ice starting to give way. One of my friends, Sarah, slipped and fell, her leg caught in a hole. Adrenaline kicked in. We helped Sarah up, dragging her across the ice as it continued to break apart. The water was black and icy, and we knew that falling through would be fatal. We reached the shore just as the entire section of ice where we had been fishing collapsed into the lake. We stood there, shivering and exhausted, watching our equipment disappear beneath the dark water. Relief washed over us, but we were also shaken. We had come close to losing our lives that day. The experience changed us. It taught us the importance of respecting nature and the dangers of underestimating its power. We never went ice fishing again, and we always double-checked the weather and ice conditions before venturing onto a frozen lake.